Hello, ghouls. I would like to start this episode with an apology. It is Friday, and I'm just now launching my episode, as opposed to my usual days of Monday. Those that aren't aware, I use Spreaker, great website. I use it to do the launch of my episodes into all the different platforms. And for some reason, my episode was tagged as having music in it. Now, I don't ever use music in my episodes. I don't consider myself that fancy. So I'm not really sure what that's about. I am in communication with them. But because of that, I am re-recording this episode so that way I can repost it. And hopefully it will make it to your ears finally. So let's get down to business. This is the 16th episode of the Shrouded in Darkness podcast. I am your true crime obsessed host, Marlena. Today's case is about the Moonlight Murders, and ghouls, this one gets savage. So have you ever watched or heard of the movie The Town That Dreaded Sundown? This was one of the first movies of its genre back in 1976. I'll be honest, I wasn't born yet, but my love of horror introduced me to this movie many years ago. What a lot of people don't realize, though, is this movie is actually based a little bit on truth. So this movie about a hooded killer on a rampage is loosely based on horrifying events of the year 1946 in the small town of Texarkana. The real case became known as the Texarkana Moonlight Murders, covering a span of about 6 months. Now let's look at the timeline. The year is 1946. Our culprit is a hooded man, eventually known as the Phantom Killer, thanks to the local Gazette. Our first night of terror starts on February 22nd. Jimmy Hollis and Mary Jean Larry are on a lover's lane, enjoying a little bit of intimate time, if you will. A masked man appears and forces them out of their vehicle, beating Jimmy with his gun, and then raping Mary. Jimmy was beaten so severely that he required surgery on his skull. If not for another vehicle approaching, the night could have ended much worse. Instead, the suspect ran away when the headlights broke through the darkness. Unfortunately, the couple shared conflicting descriptions of their attacker, which obviously didn't make it very easy on the police. They agreed that the person was tall and male, but Jimmy claimed the person was white, while Mary said they were black. The mask he was wearing, though, was confirmed by both parties to be something similar to a pillowcase with its holes cut in for the eyes and mouth sections. The next incident happens about 30 days later, so now we find ourselves in March. A father and son stumble upon a grisly scene when they find bloodied victims in a car on a quiet street. By the time emergency responders and police arrive, quite a few spectators have kind of collected around the scene. One person was so close to the crime scene that he found the parked car's keys and picked them up with his bare hands. Ghouls, don't do this. If you happen upon a crime scene, don't play cop. Let the real heroes do their jobs. Anyway, so this key discovery is a really good example of how unprepared the authorities were. Sadly, they hadn't really been properly trained to handle this kind of situation. Again, we're looking at a small town in the 40s. Violent crimes weren't exactly a normalcy for them. So back to the scene. We find another couple. Richard Griffin is on his knees in the front seat while his date, Polly Ann Moore, is face down in the back seat. Based on the evidence of what we're seeing, the suspect forced the individuals out of their car before he shot Richard and then raped and shot Polly Ann. Obviously, I'm guessing he also put them back into the car. So Texas Rangers are called on to assist in this investigation. Unlike the Texarkana police force, the Rangers had been trained in the latest crime scene tech and also had access to a crime lab in Austin. They were able to confirm that the killer used a .32 automatic pistol. So now we move on to April 14th, where Paul Martin was found at a park outside his vehicle. He'd been shot 4 times. The police are alerted that Paul was actually supposed to be with Betty Jo Booker, whose family had grown concerned for her when they weren't able to find her. So police searched the area knowing this is a thing, and unfortunately Betty's lifeless body was found. It was less than 2 miles from Paul's crime scene. She'd been sexually assaulted and shot twice. After this 3rd attack, the police notified the FBI, who obviously joined the investigation. So now we have the Texarkana police, the Texas Rangers, and the FBI. Everyone's working together to find a solution. Well, just like the 2nd crime scene, this 3rd crime scene also produces casings to a .32 caliber weapon. So they're thinking maybe these 2 cases are linked. Now we move on to the next month, May 3rd. 37-year-old farmer Virgil Starks and his wife Kate were at home, settling in for the night. Kate was in their bedroom, getting ready for bed, when she heard a strange commotion. So she goes to check and find her husband, only she finds him slumped over his armchair, and he has a gunshot to his neck. So she runs for the phone, but she stops short when she hears 2 more shots ring through the house. Both shots hit her in the face, but by some miracle, she is able to escape by running out the front door and straight to a neighbor's house. The neighbor quickly takes her to the hospital. The police were able to preserve a few key pieces of evidence, including latent fingerprints and a size 10 shoe print. Not that it would actually serve much purpose at this time, because technology was very limited in the 40s. But even in these crime scenes, back when they didn't have the technology for it, they still kept every evidence they could find. A quick side note. There were speculations that this attack, this 4th attack, may not have been by the same perpetrator known as the Phantom Killer. The MO differed greatly. We know the couple was attacked at their home instead of in their car. Plus, rounds from a .22 rifle were found instead of a .32 handgun. Regardless, for obvious reasons, citizens of Texarkana are terrified. They live in fear, never feeling safe, knowing that there's some monster out there taking the lives of people. More families even began purchasing guns and weapons to have their own protection. Everyone was worried they could be next. Not only that, though, but it was like the town had gone mad. People were turning themselves in, claiming they were the Phantom Killer, while others were quick to place accusations on neighbors and friends. Some even took to baiting the perpetrator themselves by sitting in the cars on secluded roads. One man committed suicide, and he left a confession as his final note. But all of these allegations, none of them proved to be true. The attacker remained on the loose, and according to one report, there were almost 400 possible suspects or persons of interest for this case. Based on what I have researched, there was one name that was popping up the most, really. He was the main suspect for the Moonlight Murders. His name was Yule Sweeney. He was known for stealing cars, burglary, and assaults. After some thorough research, police did discover that a vehicle was stolen around the same time of each of those murders and within the same vicinity. Not only that, but Yule's girlfriend Peggy, who would eventually become his wife, knew details about the murders that weren't released to the public. So obviously she was interviewed by the police. So she knew things that only the killer or someone present would know. But when the two get married, Peggy became protected by spousal privilege. Plus, she would later refuse to testify or even corroborate her stories. Interestingly, though, Yule was arrested for other charges. At the same time, the murder stopped. I don't know if that's a coincidence. On January 13th, 1947, Yule was indicted on felony theft. So along with this and a series of previous convictions, he was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. He was released after 26 years due to a habeas corpus proceeding. I had to look this one up. I found that the habeas corpus, in its shortest terms, means that the prisoner may have been violated of constitutional rights at the time of his sentencing. Of course, if I'm wrong on this, feel free to correct me. I love a good educational moment. So, at 77 years old, while living in a nursing home, Yule died a free man. And the truth behind the Texarkana Moonlight Murders has never been found. Now, this is the portion of the show where I like to share a few interesting facts and or theories about the case. But for today, I'm going to share a few things from the pop culture world. So obviously, I've already mentioned the movie, The Town That Dreaded Sundown. So fun fact, the 1976 original version of this film was shot in only 4 weeks, and some of the locals can be seen in the movie portraying extras. In 2014, a remake/sequel was released. It centered around repeat murders 65 years later. There have also been books written about the murders. There's The Phantom Killer by James Presley and The Texarkana Moonlight Murders by Michael Newton. So there are a lot of sources out there if you're interested in reading more about this case. And now the sources that I used for my own research, I used the Encyclopedia of Arkansas and also Wikipedia. I even checked out the FBI website, which has some public information listed as well. So the last thing we're going to do before I wrap up today's show is kind of my favorite part. It's where I share my own thoughts on the case or whatever our topic is. So for starters, I feel there's so much more to this story. There are a lot of unanswered questions and unknowns. And now that I think about it, I feel like that's often the case with the stories I share. A lot of unknowns. So the first 3 attacks were kind of similar all the way around. A couple spending quality time alone, off the beaten path, always using the same murder weapon, the same gun. The perpetrator beats the man, rapes the woman, leaves them for dead. But then the 4th attack was so drastically different. It happened inside someone's home with a different gun. There was no assault or rape. It was just a gunshot wound. Multiple gunshot wounds. And let's not forget that the couple was married. It wasn't some young teenagers hiding in the darkness of night. I suppose there is the chance that the Phantom Killer wanted to up his game, so to speak. He wanted more of a challenge, maybe. We have seen serial killers that do progress over time. You know, they become more defined with their methods. They try to go up another notch on what they're doing. It does happen, so that's a possibility. Or maybe we're looking at it completely wrong and there is the possibility of 2 separate killers. Also, I would love to know if any analyzing was done later on. You know, we know that there were fingerprints and shoe prints and things like that pulled from different crime scenes. So we know technology didn't exist back then, but obviously we've come a long way since then. Has anyone tried to re-examine the evidence? The idea that someone committed those acts and got away with it, it's just not right. So what do you think? Do you have any details worth sharing? Any interesting facts? You know the drill. Reach out to someone. Let someone know. Let's flood people's feeds with this case. And don't forget, you can connect with us on social media like Instagram and WordPress. And we're on multiple listening platforms now. Shrouded in Darkness. Thank you so much for listening. I greatly appreciate you taking the time to tune in. And again, I'm so sorry this episode comes late. We are working to make the next one even better. So catch next week's show where we're going to be talking about the werewolf butcher. Until next time, ghouls.